Have you ever wondered how a Roman emperor managed the stresses of ruling an empire? In the heart of Rome, amidst the grandeur of marble halls and the clamor of political intrigue, there reigned an emperor unlike any other. His name was Marcus Aurelius, but he wasn't just an emperor. He was a philosopher, a thinker, a man who sought wisdom not in the opulence of his throne, but in the silent contemplation of his own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius was a devotee of Stoicism, an ancient philosophy that extolled the virtues of wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Stoicism taught him to be unflinching in the face of adversity, to exercise restraint in the face of temptation, and to find serenity in the acceptance of what is. It was more than a philosophy to him. It was a way of life. Interestingly, Marcus Aurelius never intended for his philosophical musings to become public. He penned his thoughts in a series of personal notes, a sort of philosophical diary, which he referred to as his meditations. These writings were meant for his eyes only, a private dialogue between him and his inner self. Yet, centuries later, these meditations have become one of the most significant sources of our modern understanding of ancient Stoic philosophy. His meditations are a treasure trove of wisdom, filled with insights that are as relevant today as they were almost 2,000 years ago. They are a testament to the enduring power of Stoicism, a philosophy that has influenced thinkers, leaders, and seekers of wisdom throughout the ages. These meditations reflect the mind of a man who, despite being an emperor, was deeply introspective, constantly questioning, always seeking to understand the world and his place in it. They reveal a man who, despite his power and influence, strived to live a life of virtue and wisdom, guided by the principles of Stoicism. Now let's delve into the mind of this Stoic philosopher and unearth the wisdom he has left for us. From the power of perception to the value of time, from the importance of self-discipline to the legacy he left behind. Join us as we explore the life lessons from Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor. Imagine being the most powerful man in the known world, yet choosing to see yourself as no more significant than a common man. This was the reality of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome. He had the power to command armies, to dictate laws, and to shape the future of an empire. But he chose to see beyond the illusion of power and status. He saw himself not as an emperor, but as a part of the grand tapestry of life, no more or less important than any other. His belief in the power of perception shaped his reality. He believed our minds, not our circumstances, hold the key to our happiness and peace. He wrote in his meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Marcus Aurelius could have easily been swept away by the grandeur of his position, the adulation of the crowds, the trappings of power, but he chose to see them for what they were, fleeting, transient, and ultimately insignificant in the grand scheme of things. He did not allow himself to be defined by his external circumstances. Instead, he defined himself by his thoughts, his values, and his actions. Imagine if we all chose to see ourselves this way, not defined by our job titles, our bank balances, our likes on social media, but by the quality of our thoughts, the richness of our values, and the impact of our actions. The power of perception, as Marcus Aurelius teaches us, is not about ignoring reality. It's about choosing to see reality in a way that empowers us, that enriches our lives, and that allows us to contribute positively to the world around us. It is a lesson that rings true even today, almost 2,000 years after his death. The power of perception is not just about how we see the world, it's about how we choose to see ourselves within it. So remember, your perception shapes your reality. What if you knew that each moment could be your last? How would that change your perspective? Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, had an intimate understanding of this question. He held a profound respect for the impermanence of life, and it was this respect that shaped his view on the value of time. Marcus was no stranger to the sting of death. He faced the mortality of those he held dear, losing close friends and family members. Yet it was through these painful experiences that he found wisdom. Instead of crumbling under the weight of grief, he used it as a reminder of life's fleeting nature. Each loss was a stark reminder of the inevitability of death, and it was this understanding that fueled his urgency to make the most of the present. He once wrote, Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. This quote encapsulates his philosophy beautifully. He urged us not to take our time for granted, not to squander it on trivial pursuits or empty pleasures. Instead, he championed the idea of living each moment to its fullest, of being virtuous and good in the here and now. Marcus Aurelius was a man who knew the value of time. He knew that it was the one resource that, once spent, could never be regained. He knew that each ticking second brought him closer to his inevitable end, and yet he wasn't afraid. Instead, he chose to embrace this truth, to live a life filled with purpose and virtue. He understood that every sunrise is a gift, every breath a blessing, and he challenged us to do the same, to not just count our time, but to make our time count, to live not as if we have all the time in the world, but as if each moment could be our last. Therefore, value time. It's the one thing you can never get back. Could you imagine having all the luxuries of the world at your fingertips, and yet choosing a life of simplicity and discipline? This was the path Marcus Aurelius, the great Stoic emperor, chose to tread. Despite his position of power, he opted for a life of self-discipline and simplicity, understanding that these were the keys to true freedom and happiness. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary?" He was not merely referring to material possessions or extravagant indulgences, but to every thought, every emotion, and every action that we choose to engage with. He understood that our mind is the canvas upon which we paint the picture of our life, and every stroke matters. So how did he exercise this self-discipline? He began by simplifying his life. Despite being an emperor, he lived modestly, avoiding the distractions of luxurious living. He understood that the more we possess, the more we're possessed. His focus was not on acquiring more, but on needing less and appreciating what he had.